Well, good afternoon. Been a few days since I've done a video as far as gardening goes. Today is planting day. I'm pretty much going to lay my whole garden by today and get everything in the ground. I'm hoping to beat the rain. I've got about an hour to an hour and a half window to try to beat the rain. I want to get everything in the ground, and then hopefully it'll get a decent soaking this afternoon or evening. But what I'm planting and the video I'm doing today is tomatoes. That's probably the most popular plant. Let me make some adjustments here with my camera, if you'll excuse me just a minute. There we go. Probably the most popular plant that people will plant is tomatoes. Now I'm also going to be planting peppers, several varieties of peppers, both hot and sweet. And I generally put those in one bed. I have a 5x5 bed that is kind of my pepper patch, and I'll plant those. I'm planting cayenne, jalapeno, sweet banana, ghost pepper, and habanero. And I use all of those except for the banana peppers in my dill pickles. I make several types of dill pickles every year. And so I'll use the peppers for that, and then the banana peppers, I typically pickle those and can eat them on salads or however you like to eat them. Also, of course, going to be putting some squash and cucumbers in the ground. I've got both seed and plants, and I do both because what that will do, if you do plants, they're going to kind of get a jump by a few weeks. So you're going to, that way you'll have not only early cucumbers, early squash, but you can plant some seeds behind that. And in my case, I use an archway that's made out of cattle panels. And I'll go in and plant some hills with just seeds, and they'll be a few weeks behind. That way I'll have kind of a continuous supply of squash and cucumbers all the way into fall. Last year I had both of them into mid to late fall. Was still getting cucumbers and squash. So kind of lay your planting out and plant at different stages. It's just like lettuce. I've got lettuce plants here, but what I will do when I plant this row of tomatoes, since lettuce likes shade and it's getting kind of late for lettuce, I'll plant them kind of on the east side of my tomato plants, just a row, but I'll plant them from seed. And that way, not only will the shade from the tomatoes protect the lettuce from sun scald and just the general heat, but also once I get through harvesting the lettuce, then I'll have some fresh coming in behind it. Now, one trick when you're harvesting, if you planted romaine lettuce, for instance, now head lettuce, which I've got some of that also, you can't do it with it, but romaine lettuce, if you'll only harvest about 1/3 or 2/3 of that plant, it will regenerate and it will make more lettuce for you. The only thing is, when it gets hot and we get into these hot Alabama summers, then it will stop producing and it will bolt and it will be through. But planting some of that, I'm going to plant some flowers if the rain holds off. My main prerogative today is to get my vegetables in the ground, and then I may come back tomorrow and plant flowers. I've got a ton of flowers to plant. Zinnias, I don't know, I can't remember what all I bought. And then I've got some herbs that I'll plant. One trick to kind of help with the pest problem, when you do your tomatoes, I highly recommend going somewhere that sells herbs and buy you some basil. You can buy it in plants, you can sow it from seed, but use basil and marigolds around your tomato plants. I've done that the last several years. Last year I had one of those tomato hornworms all season long, but I had 3 big basil plants growing right up through the middle of my tomatoes. So that's a natural way to deter pests. So I highly recommend you doing that. And there's other herbs. You can do oregano, you can do thyme, you can do chives, and just intersperse that stuff through your garden. And those are natural pest deterrents. And I do that kind of stuff, and I don't have to use the commercially made pesticides. I have not used a pesticide in years, which to me makes sense. Why would I want to put something that's poison on my vegetables? It kind of defeats the purpose of growing your own food when you do that. You're really doing the same thing that the big corporate farms are doing, that are shipping the stuff to the grocery stores, and they put the preservatives and that kind of stuff on it to keep the fruit and vegetables from going bad. So you look for natural ways, and you can research that stuff online. There's all kinds of resources on YouTube, on Google that you can go to. But any kind of herb like oregano, thyme, basil, chives, anything that has a strong scent to it will deter those pests, along with marigolds. I highly recommend planting marigolds. They're easy to grow from seed, or you can do plants if you want to. I like the seed because they come along about the time the pests start coming along to start bothering your tomatoes and your pepper plants and that kind of stuff. But anyway, let's get to it. I've got a lot to plant before it rains, so I'm gonna kind of wind this up and just show you kind of what I do with my tomatoes. What I've got here again is just the dirt and trash from a local cotton gin, and I'll just show you kind of down in here. I put this dirt in about a month ago, and it's just as soft and it's good dirt that aerates. It's already got a lot of earthworm activity in it, which means there's probably a lot of microbial activity in it, which is going to help your plants, to feed your plants. So, you know, use that. If you don't have that, get you some compost. I'm going to do a video later in the year on building a compost bin. They're so easy to do, and they're so beneficial. But all these beds not only have the gin dirt, but they also have the compost that I've made mixed into this and worked into it. And honestly, doing that, I use very little commercial fertilizer. And when I do use a fertilizer, I usually use blood meal. But do not put it right directly on your plants, because that blood meal will absolutely burn them up. But anyway, what I'll do with my tomatoes, and there's a variety of ways you can do this. Excuse me. There's all kinds of tricks to the trade as far as planting tomatoes. Some people put a little bit of Epsom salt in the bottom of the hole. I plant mine, and then once they get established, I'll come back, sprinkle just a little bit of blood meal around it, kind of work it in where it'll feed the roots, and then that's pretty much it as far as what I do to tomatoes, other than keeping them watered. But don't overwater. Again, good way to check, especially if you're doing raised beds. Take your index finger and just go down in the dirt. And like this dirt, we hadn't had rain in several weeks, but that dirt is still moist. When I squeeze it, there's actually moisture on my gloves, and it clods together. That's how you know if you've still got a good amount of moisture. If it clods together and then breaks up easily, that means you've got plenty of moisture in your soil, so you don't need to water. A lot of people will overwater. Overwatering is as bad as drying out, because you cause root rot and those kind of things. But as far as tomatoes, now these are in peat pots. You can actually plant the entire pot. I don't do that. What I do is I tear this peat away, but I put it down in the hole of the tomato. And all you're going to do with tomatoes, it's real simple. You're going to dig that hole out a little deeper than the pot, because what you're going to do is you're going to take this tomato, and I will bury this tomato. What I'll do is I'll take this stem, bottom stem, I will break it off. And actually, I put it in the ground, because a lot of times you'll get a volunteer off that. And I will bury this tomato at least a quarter way up the stem, if not a little further, where basically all I'm going to see is this part of the tomato. Reason being, all these little hairs that you see along the stem of this tomato will make roots. It's going to make that plant stronger. It's going to make it thrive better. It's going to give it a better base, better root system, and a healthier plant, and ultimately more fruit. So what I'll do is this limb here, I'll pinch it off. I'll bury it. I'll just lay it in the soil and cover it up. You water that, that will come up. and you'll have extra tomato. But with these, I just peel that away. I drop it in the hole. So why do you do that? Well, this peat cup is biodegradable, first of all. It's not going to hurt your soil. It's not going to hurt your plant. But it will help that plant retain water. It also attracts earthworms. It attracts the microbes and this thing called mycelium that helps feed the soil. These little white strands that you see in your soil, especially if you put some mushroom spores in, which I'm going to be doing here probably this week sometime, if not this week, next week. But I will bury that thing up to where it's about halfway up the stem, and then I just mound the dirt up around it. Give it a pretty good pat, keep it in there good. And that's really all it is to it. You can see how much of that tomato is sticking out. It's not very much. And I'm going to do that down through here with these 4 Better Boy tomatoes, which is probably the most popular variety that you'll see people plant here, because they'll make about a 1 pound fruit on average. And they will produce, if you take care of them and you keep them pruned. When I say pruned, around the bottom, you keep airflow. Now I'm going to do something different. For my entire gardening life, I have used cages. I'm not going to do that this year, and I hope my experiment works, but I'm going to build an archway, because Better Boys, Cherokee Purple, which is another kind I'm going to plant, and then the cherry tomatoes are what's called indeterminate tomatoes. They'll climb as long as they have something to climb to. So I'm going to build an archway out of cattle panels, and I'll probably do that next week. I want these things to get rooted and kind of get going, and then I'm going to come right down through here, and I'll put a T-post here, one in the middle and one on the end in each bed, the bed over behind me that you can't see, because I'll plant another row over there, and my Cherokee Purple and my cherry tomatoes on that side. And those things will climb over that arch, and that fruit will hang down through that cattle panel. So rather than me having to reach in and find tomatoes in a cage, I can just walk through and just pull them through the cattle panel like I do my cucumbers. What it will also do, theoretically, and I think it's going to work, is it's going to give you more airflow. Airflow is important to tomatoes. It helps it resist disease. It keeps your plant healthy. It will produce more fruit. And I'm also going to keep them pruned. I've not pruned them a whole lot over the years, but I'm going to do more pruning this time. Like probably a foot up the plant. I don't want any limbs on it. So I'll prune those away where the fruit will bear through the top of the plant. And I'm just going to see how it works this time. And if it don't work, then I'll back up and punt next year. Now, I'll do that down this row, do the same thing. I'll do the same thing over to the bed in behind me. And that'll be my tomatoes. Like I said, I'll let them sit like this for about a week, keep them watered good. I will probably come back today, put a little bit of bone meal around the base of the plant, out around it a few inches, and kind of just work it in with my fingers. And then after a few weeks, once this plant starts growing, what I'll do is take a little bit of blood meal. It doesn't take much, and just sprinkle a little bit of it around, because it's pure nitrogen. It's 12, I think it's 1200 is the bag I've got. It's pure nitrogen. And that will feed your plant through the growing season. I'd recommend doing that with not only tomatoes, I'd do it with your peppers, and I'd also do it with your potatoes. I've got some potatoes that are up close to a foot tall. And one thing I'll do today is go in and fill these grow bags in. And that's going to create more tubers, which is going to create more potatoes. But also, while I do that, I'm going to take the blood meal, sprinkle a little blood meal around to feed those, and then that'll be the last thing I do for the potatoes. They'll just do their thing, and they'll grow. They don't require any more fertilizer. I'll just keep them watered in those grow bags, and if history is any indicator, in the 3-gallon grow bags, I'll get anywhere from 12 to 15 potatoes. In my 5-gallon grow bags that I've got 10 of those. With red potatoes and the Yukon Gold potatoes, I'll get anywhere from 18 to 21, 22 potatoes out of each bag. But the key is you got to keep them watered. Once they get going, fill those grow bags to the top and then mulch them with some straw. Put some straw around them, and that's going to help them retain moisture. It's also going to protect those potatoes from the sun. If you have some that kind of get up to the surface, the sun will actually burn them or scald them, and they're not very good when they do that. So mulch them down, and you'll have good potatoes. But anyway, that's all I've got today. I'm going to get busy. I've got a lot to get planted before this rain gets here within the next hour or so. And so I've got to get going and get my garden in. And I'll give you an update maybe tomorrow on what I've done, and kind of give you a look at how I've laid everything out. But for now, that's planting tomatoes. So if you've not planted them and you live in the zone 7A, 7B where we're at, it's time to plant. Put those tomatoes in the ground. If we get just a freak cold snap that drops back into the low 40s or 30s and you want to cover them up, that's fine. But make sure in the mornings, early morning, you get that cover off of them, because it will absolutely fry your tomato plants. But as long as you're not getting the frost, your tomato plants will be fine. So if you hadn't got started yet, I'd highly recommend the next week or so, go ahead and get that stuff in, get ahead on the growing season, and enjoy your garden. Now, with that being said, let's get gardening.